I didn't build the house because I had money. I built it because one evening my father couldn't lift his coffee with one hand. It was a small thing, almost invisible. His fingers trembled, and for a second the cup tilted. Then he studied it with both hands. He smiled, as if nothing had happened. But I saw it. I always saw the things no one else noticed. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with numbers spread in front of me: salary, savings, debt, time. At 3:17 a.m., I circled a number: $545,000. Not a dream, a plan. "You're going to exhaust yourself," my manager told me weeks later. "I'll stop when it's done," I said. "When what's done?" I didn't answer, because what I was building couldn't be explained in one sentence. My father, Connor, had spent 30 years working underground in a mine. The hard work in the mine took a heavy toll on his health. His body paid for it. Over time, his knees began to ache, and then his back. But what changed most wasn't physical, it was his confidence. He stopped going near the water, although he used to love spending time at the seaside. That was when I knew something was truly wrong. I knew I couldn't wait any longer. "I don't need help," he told me once. "I know," I said, stepping back. Because help, if given wrong, becomes control. The land I found was by the sea, flat, quiet, forgiving. No rocks, no sharp edges, no excuses. I sat across from the contractor and spoke like I was laying down laws. No stairs. He nodded. Doorways wider than standard. He paused, then wrote it down. "And the path to the dock." My throat tightened. "It has to be smooth. He walks it alone. No one touches him." The contractor studied me for a second. "Not even you?" "Especially not me." 2 jobs, 5 years, no shortcuts. Every commission went into that house, every missed holiday, every night I came home too tired to feel anything. Because I wasn't building walls, I was building a moment. On their 30th anniversary, I drove my parents there. "Where are we going?" my mother asked. "Just lunch," I said, but my voice wasn't steady. My father saw the house, then the path, then the water. You think he asked questions? You think he hesitated? No, he stepped out of the car and walked, past me, past the door, straight toward the dock, slowly, carefully, alone. I didn't follow. This moment belonged to him. "Connor," my mother whispered, but he didn't stop. I didn't follow. I couldn't. Because if I helped him now, I would steal the very thing I built. Step by step, he moved forward. Not steady, not strong, but his. Every step his. When he reached the dock, he didn't turn around. He just stood there, facing the sea like a man meeting an old friend he thought he'd lost forever. Behind me, my mother's voice broke. "Antonia, what did you do?" I swallowed hard. I gave him a choice. He stayed there a long time, long enough for the silence to say everything we couldn't. My father didn't look like a man who was fading. He didn't look like a man losing something. He looked like a man finding it again. He looked like a man who was coming back. I thought that was the end of the story, the beautiful part, the part people would write about. I was wrong. Because soon someone else will come along and try to ruin everything. For 9 months, life settled into something gentle. Every morning at 7:10, my father stepped onto the porch with his coffee. At 7:12, he walked down the path. By 7:16, he reached the dock. Not quickly, not perfectly, but always on his own. My mother changed too. She planted roses. In addition, she breathed new life into an abandoned apple orchard and began tending to the apple trees. One evening, I saw her smiling without realizing it. "I forgot I could do that," she said. It felt like something fragile but real. If the story ended here, you'd call it perfect, but perfect things don't stay untouched. Until my brother Marcus came back. He used to be the apple of his parents' eye. They adored him, but he left home a long time ago. He arrived without warning, a suitcase in one hand, confidence in the other. "Miss me?" he asked. I didn't answer, because something already felt wrong. At first, it was subtle. "So, you walk to the dock alone?" he asked Dad that evening, casual, almost impressed. "Yes," my father said. Marcus tilted his head. "Is that safe?" That word stayed in the air. Safe. It didn't sound like concern. It sounded like doubt dressed as kindness. The next morning, my father didn't walk. He sat on the porch staring at the water. "Dad," I said quietly. He didn't look at me. "Maybe I'll rest today." Marcus didn't stop there. "Let me walk with you," he offered the following day, already holding Dad's elbow before the answer came. Marcus began walking with him, guiding each step. By the time they reached the dock, it wasn't independence anymore. It was supervision. Just one question from Marcus turned everything for the worse. Then came the brochure, a nursing home, left on the table. "What is this?" I asked. "Just options," Marcus said. "We don't need options." "You don't. He might." I threw it away. The next morning, it was back. And then came the moment I can't forget. I walked into the living room and saw my father sitting alone, a paper in his hand, a pen clipped neatly to the top. "Where did you get that?" I asked. I already knew. He didn't meet my eyes. Marcus gave it to me. Tower of Attorney. Marcus's name already typed. His signature line empty. A pen clipped to the top. Waiting. "I didn't sign it," he added quickly. Then, softer, "He was watching me, like he was waiting for me to forget something." That was when everything became clear. This wasn't concern, it was strategy. Marcus didn't come back to stay with his parents and help them. He had returned with a plan. He had come home to take. I knew something was wrong before I saw Stranger. The house felt interrupted. Not loud, not broken, just off. Like someone had moved a single object in a room you know by heart. I stepped onto the porch and froze. There was a man in our yard. Camera, clipboard, measuring tape clipped to his belt. He moved methodically, angles, corners, the dock, the windows, capturing everything like it already belonged to someone else. My father stood near the steps, not angry, not even confused, just displaced. "Sir," he called out, voice thinner than I'd ever heard it. "Can I help you?" The man turned, polite smile ready. "I'm here for the appraisal." Appraisal. A word that doesn't ask permission. A word that assumes the end. "What appraisal?" my father asked. The man hesitated, checked his notes, then said it. "Ordered by Marcus." Something cold slid through my chest. "Stop," I said, stepping forward. "You need to leave." He blinked, surprised. "Ma'am, I have authorization." "You don't have ours." He packed up slowly, too slowly, like the house might disappear if he moved too fast. When his car finally pulled away, the silence hit harder than any argument. I walked inside. Marcus was in the kitchen, pouring coffee like it was any other morning. "Why is there a man photographing our house?" I asked. He didn't look up. "We need to know what it's worth." "What it's worth?" I repeated. "Yes," he said calmly. "It's called being responsible." Responsible. That word again. Always clean, always reasonable, always hiding something underneath. "You don't call an appraiser unless you're planning to sell," I said. Now he looked at me and smiled. Not warm, sharp. Maybe we should. The air shifted. Heavy. Final. This house is the only place Dad can live without help, I said, each word deliberate. The only place he can walk, the only place he isn't afraid. Marcus stepped closer. You built this, he said, and now you think you decide everything. I built it because you weren't here. Silence. Then, there's no place for me in this family, he snapped. No name on anything, no say. Before I could answer, a voice cut through the room. Quiet, steady, unshakable. I am still here. We both turned. My father stood in the doorway, hand on the frame, eyes clear. I'm not deaf, and I'm not a helpless, disabled person, he said. And I'm not going to a nursing home, Marcus. I am not leaving my home. That was the moment everything broke, not loudly, but completely. Marcus grabbed his suitcase, stormed to the door, then stopped, turned back. You're going to regret this. The door slammed, and in the echo that followed, I realized something terrifying. He wasn't right. This wasn't over, not even close. The house was quiet again, but it wasn't the same quiet. Before, it had been peace. Now, it was absence. My father didn't walk to the dock the next morning, and the next morning, the same thing happened again. At 7:10, he still sat on the porch with his coffee. At 7:12, nothing. No movement, no decision, just his eyes fixed on the water like it no longer belonged to him. It takes months to build independence. It takes seconds to take it away. Dad, I said softly on the third morning, the path is still there. He nodded. I know. But he didn't move. I didn't push him. That was the hardest part, because pushing would mean I didn't trust him either, and if I became that, then Marcus had already won. On the fourth morning, he finally spoke. Antonia. His voice was careful, too careful. I turned toward him, and then he asked it. Are you a project to me? There are questions that don't sound like accusations, but land like them anyway. I froze. He looked at me then, really looked. Are you helping me or managing me? For a moment, I couldn't breathe, because I realized something terrifying. Marcus hadn't just attacked the house, he'd reached inside my father's mind. I pulled a chair across from him and sat down. No, I said quietly. Listen to me. I built this house so you wouldn't need me, I continued. I made the doorways wide so you could walk through them alone. I made the path smooth so you could choose when to take it. His hands trembled slightly around the cup. You watch me, he said, like you're waiting for me to fail. That one hurt. I watch you, I said, my voice breaking, because I know what it cost you to get back here. Silence. Long. Heavy. Then, he set the cup down. Slowly. Deliberately. He stood up, and in that moment, everything balanced on one decision. He walked past me. No words, no hesitation. I followed him to the porch and stopped, because this wasn't my walk. Step by step, he moved down the path, shaking, unsteady, but choosing. Halfway there, he paused. I held my breath. Then he kept going. When he reached the dock, he didn't sit immediately. He stood, facing the water, alone. And that's when the tears came. Natural, not theatrical. Tears of joy for my father. Just quiet relief breaking through everything I had been holding in. Behind me, my mother whispered, "He went back." I nodded. "He never left," I said. But deep down, I knew the truth. He had, and he had just fought his way back, and this time, no one was going to take that from him again. Marcus called 3 weeks later. I almost didn't answer. "Hey," he said. Not confident, not sharp, just smaller. "How's Dad?" he asked. Not, "How are you?" Not, "I'm sorry." Just him. "He walks every morning," I said. Silence. Then, "Good." That was all. But it wasn't nothing. A month later, the call came from a lawyer. "Your father updated his will," the man said. My chest tightened. He insisted on doing it alone. That evening, I drove to the house. Didn't ask, didn't prepare. He was on the porch, watching the water. "You know," he said before I could speak, "I signed something today." I sat beside him. "What kind of something?" He looked at me, clear, certain. "The house goes to you." Not anger, not punishment, choice. "Dad, you don't have to." He lifted his hand. "I do. I spent years letting life happen to me," he said quietly. "This, I decided." My throat closed. Then he reached into his pocket and handed me a folded note, his handwriting uneven, careful. I opened it. "You did not control me. You saw me. You helped me." That was when I broke. Not loudly, just enough for him to place his hand over mine and hold it there. At that moment, tears welled up in his eyes. I too was overcome with emotion, and tears streamed down my cheeks as I said, "Dad, I really love you and Mom, and I'm glad you finally understand that." Behind us, my mother whispered, "We didn't see you because you've never asked us for anything. The quiet ones don't need less. They just get less." That night, the porch light turned on at sunset. My father stood up to switch it himself. And the next morning, 7:10, coffee. 7:12, he walked. Not perfectly, not quickly, but finally, completely his.
Friends, what do you think of this story? Write your opinion in the comments. Would you like more stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button so you don't miss any videos. See you tomorrow.